Hey, Flimsy Lunch Tray here, and welcome to World Warships. As today we're going to be doing an upgrade commander build video here on the Tier 7 Commonwealth Premium Destroyer, the Huron, otherwise a Royal Canadian naval ship. So, throughout the video you're going to probably hear me make some comparisons to this destroyer to the Tier 8 Premium British Destroyer, HMS Cossack, and that is because they are both tribal class destroyers. And there's only very minor differences between the tier, guns, and AA, and concealment, and just some minor things, but mostly this ship plays the same as HMS Cossack. So first we need to discuss what type of destroyer we're talking about. Are we talking about a torpedo destroyer, a gunboat destroyer, or a hybrid destroyer? Well, I would say that the Huron is a hybrid destroyer. However, like on a bar, if you were to draw a line, she's hybrid in the middle, but she leans to the right towards being a gunboat destroyer because, I mean, her concealment's pretty good for Tier 7, being 6.2 kilometer, but these guns are pretty decent. She's got 6 guns, 12.3 kilometer, 120 millimeter guns. She doesn't get a smoke, but she gets a repair party. So you'll be kind of finding yourself more shooting out in the open, trying to utilize some of your range, and she only gets 1 rack of torpedoes, 1 quad whack. So in that case, she's hybrid destroyer that leans towards a gunboat destroyer. Now, in terms of her armor layout, she's got some interesting things going on. So she's got 16 millimeter on the fore-end plating and the aft-end plating, 10 millimeter on the superstructure, but she gets this 19 millimeter side plating, or the vital ship part armor on the ship, and you go beneath the waterline, it's 16. So she gets this little bit of a belt here, so a lot of times you can be dealing with destroyers that are targeting this midsection of your ship. I mean, with the Cossack and here with Huron, usually if you just aim for this big fat nose, because how it kind of swoops up out of the water, you can quickly be damage saturating this, of course, but it's a pretty sizable target to hit. So that is the ship type, I would say, as a destroyer, and the armor layout. So let's go ahead and look at her modules. Now, her modules, she doesn't get any upgrades. What you see is what you get. She has these 120 millimeter guns. Right now, we have a 4.2 second reload time, 180 degree turn time of 18 seconds. So it takes a little bit to get those turrets turned around. HE shell damage 1600, AP shell damage 2100. Her hull is rather buff, not only just because of the note of the 19 millimeter armor in the midsection of the ship, but her health pool. She has 18,150. If we hop over to HMS Cossack real quick, it's 18,000. So you actually have more health at Tier 7 in the Huron than you do with Cossack, and that's even with the survivability expert mounted on both of our commanders. So something to keep in mind here. So even when you get to tie in that repair party, you get to utilize, you can take more engagements than what you could in Cossack as an example, because you don't get a repair party, and we get a little bit more health here. Torpedoes, they are much longer reloading torpedoes. Cossack's like 66 seconds, I think. Here on the Huron, they're 96 seconds, so they added 30 seconds on essentially, and they're 8 kilometer range instead of the 10 kilometer range that the Cossack has. And you can see that actually the damage and the torpedo speed are the same, 16,767 and 62 knots. So these are not fast moving torpedoes. You saw in yesterday's clip, you know, we kind of drove up beside a Duncan utilizing an island and tried to dump them into a side, which was somewhat successful. So these torpedoes, they don't have a ton of alpha, especially when you take into account battleships or cruiser torpedo reduction, the armor belts. Her guns are 12.3 kilometer, so actually pretty decent. When we go look at the Cossack, it's a little bit better actually, by 0.4 kilometer. So that kind of gives you a little bit more freedom where you're going to be using this ship a little bit more at range than Cossack. Just because Cossack, you have 5.5 kilometer concealment and you're often drawing really close. Or Huron, it's touch and go. You get 36.5 knots, but if we mount the Sierra Mike flag, 38.3 knots, utilize your engine boost, you're easily busting over 40 knots here in the Huron. Now, in terms of her upgrades, I'm running the main armaments modification 1. Risk of main battery becoming incapacitated and torpedo tubes becoming incapacitated, -20%. Survivability of both, plus 50%. Repair time of both, -20% if they should become incapacitated. So this is rather handy to have here on the Huron in comparison to the other modules that or upgrades you could choose. The magazine modification 1 you don't need because this does a -70% risk of your ship's magazine detonating. Just take the Juliet Charlie combat signal here, which completely eliminates the risk of your ship's magazine detonating. Second slot, I'm going to make 2 suggestions. The first is the engine room protection. So this is if you don't want to spend coal for a special upgrade, then just get the engine room protection. This reduces the risk of your engine and your steering gears from becoming incapacitated by -20%, and the repair time if they should become incapacitated is -20%. Otherwise, what I'm going to recommend you take is the hydroacoustic search modification 1. This will add an additional 20% onto your hydroacoustic search. So our considerable action time right now is 110 seconds. So by adding 20%, we're getting up closer to 130 seconds, if I'm not mistaken. So that is quite handy to have. So you can just click on this. This is actually what I'd recommend you take as a first option here on the second slot. Use a coupon, do yourself a favor, drop it down to 12,750 coal. I'm using my coupon in coal for some other things right now. I'm going to be using my coupon for Schlieffen Hydro here pretty soon. This would be the #1 suggestion, recommendation I'd have to take here. Third would be engine boost. For the 4th slot, you have a couple options. You have main battery modification 2 to help with that kind of longer traverse speed of your main battery. But really, I'm going to recommend you to take that aiming systems modification 1. It decreases your maximum main battery shell dispersion, so it means your horizontal and your vertical dispersion are tighter. It's bringing it in a little bit more by -7%. So that's good. You want that since your ship revolves more around your guns versus torpedoes. So that's what I recommend you take. Your AA sucks, don't bother. And then again, you're more of a gunboat than you are a torpedo destroyer. So take aiming systems modification 1. For the 4th slot, you already get a baked in propulsion modification 1. So then just go ahead and take the steering gears modification 1 upgrade, rudder shift time, -20%. One of my favorite things about the Kulsik, and there are many, is her rudder shift time. When you build the steering gears modification 1, it's 2.9 seconds. Here on the Huron, it's 3 seconds when you take this. So it's actually really good, and they have a similar feel, somewhat so to speak, in terms of the rudder shift, because they're that close. So really do yourself a favor and go for that. I wouldn't mess with depth charges. I wouldn't mess with damage control system modification. Just take steering gears modification 1. Now let's talk about her armament real quick. I don't always do this with destroyers, but we have something interesting going on here with the Huron. So you have your high explosive shells, 4.2 second reload time. We can get that down to 4 seconds and then a little bit more with our build. You have your armor piercing shells with these 120mm guns. They're pretty good. Try to use that when you get some broadside cruiser targets. You have your spitting image of the Kulsik torpedoes, longer reload time, 16,767 maximum damage. You get your depth charges, maximum damage 5,000, but what's not listed here is the secondary gun that you actually have here on the Huron. So if you watched yesterday's video, you probably laughed with me because my secondary gun got knocked out in the battle. So they gave up, I think historically, they gave up this, there was a main battery turret here, and they gave that up in favor of a more AA defense here on the ship. So if I pull up the AA guns, yeah, you can see a little bit more happening here. So I think, yeah, so it's a dual purpose secondary gun, also does your some AA damage for you. Um, but they gave that secondary turret up for, or the main battery turret up for another AA gun secondary turret. And I can count on one hand how many destroyers have a secondary gun. So it's rather amusing. It has a 4.2 kilometer range, 3-second reload time. So I'm sure at some point we'll be seeing some memes of people getting secondary close quarter kills with the Huron. So I think that's rather amusing in terms of her armament that you have here on the ship. We can go and talk about the AA real quick. AA sucks on this ship. It's not the Kosyk's 2.5 kilometer. We have a 5.8 kilometer, but your AA rating is still really poor for a destroyer. It's 38. Kosyk, for example, is 20. So you don't play the Huron for AA. You don't build into the AA either, even though the ship historically has more of an enhanced AA, but in the game it's really weak. So don't expect it to do much for you. Now, in terms of her consumables, you get your damage control party, 5-second action time, reload time 40 seconds, and rather interesting for a tier 7 destroyer, you get a repair party. So HP per second is 217, but we can actually buff that with it. Well, we actually have buffed that with India Delta. Without it, it's 181, but whenever a destroyer has a repair party, I always run India Delta just to get that little bit additional heal back, because I think it's valuable. And you actually saw we definitely utilized those heals in yesterday's videos. So this is a bit interesting for tier 7 destroyer, so definitely take advantage of it. We'll talk a little bit more about that with the commander build. Engine boost plus 8%, you get 3 charges. This is nice to have. We can get this up to 4 charges. Your hydroacoustic search, a little bit different than the HMS Kosik. Your detection range of torpedoes is 3 kilometers, but detection of ships is 4 kilometers, where on HMS Kosik it's 3 kilometers for detection of ships. So you can utilize this to your advantage. You saw there was a Z-23 had to deal with yesterday, and he gets a longer hydroacoustic search than I did, and he can have the freedom to smoke up, so we couldn't really push that engagement with the Z-23. But we can use this to help screen for torpedoes for our friendly allies, and you saw me do this in actually both clips yesterday that I featured. So try to use these not only for yourself, but to help your teammates out, especially the battleships, very helpful. And in terms of the combat signals, you can see what I'm running here. This is probably fully 8 of 8. This is what I'd run. I always run ram flag because you might find yourself in a situation where you have to end up ramming a ship. So it's funny when you're a destroyer and you take a battleship with you and the battleship's like, what? How did he kill me with that ram? It's amusing, and these combat signals are super cheap. In terms of the commander skills, this is your 10-point bread and butter build. Being preventive maintenance, risk of your main turrets, torpedo tubes, steering gears, and engine becoming incapacitated, negative 30%. Then with 3-point, you want to take a last stand. This is a must on all destroyers in the game. The ship remains partially able to sustain speed and maneuverability with the engine and steering gears incapacitated, and you saw that that did happen to me yesterday, so it was good to still have this so we weren't dead in the water. You want survivability experts, plus 350 HP for each ship tier, which brings us to that 18,150. So this is really nice to have, especially when you get to pair it with your repair party, which is not common on tier 7 destroyers. Then for 10-point, you want to go for concealment expert. Ship's detectability range, negative 10%, which gets us down to that 6.2 kilometer by sea, 2.7 by air, and by depths 0 to 2.7. So that's your bread and butter 10-point build. After this, what would I recommend you take? This is probably going to vary to you. I'm going to give you 2 options of what you should take first. First, you could either take Adrenaline Rush. So as you lose health, your main battery reload time is going to drop by 0.2%. Your torpedo tube reload time, negative 0.2%. Your secondary battery, which we have that on the Huron, is going to reload a little bit faster. And we get a little buff to our continuous AA damage. So if you want to be having your guns shooting at beneath 4 seconds as you lose health, 3.8, 3.9, maybe 3.7, you can take Adrenaline Rush. Or you could take the Superintendent skill first. This is going to give you more capability in terms of if you're a shorter player and you tend to live in the second half of the battle, then I mean, that's the goal, right? Then you want, having additional engine boost, having additional hydroacoustic search, but also especially that repair party, because I would definitely be using repair parties because I'm playing this more as a gunboat hybrid destroyer, so it means I want to pick gun engagements with enemy destroyers. So to have another heal to heal back from these knife fights I have with enemy destroyers, I really value. So for myself, I intend to pick up Superintendent first, so that's a 13-point commander. Then with a 16-point commander, I would pick up Adrenaline Rush for the reasons we just discussed. And then for a 19-point commander, I'm going to pick up Main Battery and AA Specialist, and we're taking this skill primarily for the Main Battery. Our main battery reload time is going to drop by -5%, our continuous AA damage plus 10%, so our main battery is going to drop down to 4 seconds. Okay, so this skill ties in really nice with Adrenaline Rush. So now our reload time could get down to 3.7, 3.6 seconds with Adrenaline Rush. So really good to be able to have that, so you're kind of becoming a little bit more feisty, vicious as you lose health on this destroyer as the game progresses. The continuous damage you can see is just +7, so this takes you up to 79, so nothing to gawk about. After this, you have 2 points remaining. What would I recommend? I'm going to give you 2 options. First, I'm going to say Priority Target. Priority Target all around is just a really good skill to have. It gives you, as a destroyer, especially since we are more of a hybrid gunboat leaning destroyer, it gives us ideas of when targets are focusing us. You saw me open gunboating multiple times in both matches yesterday. You saw that there were ships that would shoot at me that I didn't see that were aiming at me, but we were able to, just because we were juking, we avoided those salvos regardless. So having a little bit more situational awareness, I think, is just fine to have here at tier 7 in the Huron. If you're not going to take that, what else would I recommend? Well then, if the turret traverse time, that 18 seconds, is really bugging you, you can go ahead and pick up Grease the Gears. That's going to drop you down to 15.7 seconds, and then I would say pick up Incoming Fire Alert. So you're still giving yourself situational awareness. It's not as good as Priority Target, but you're still giving yourself situational awareness. Now, one of the reasons why I'm not going to recommend the Main Battery and AA Expert skill to you, which gives you a range up to 14.8, is because the shells take a bit in their travel time, and I felt like even in yesterday's clip when I think I was shooting that Roma at 10 kilometers plus away, we still had a little bit of difficulty landing our shots just because of the shell travel time. So I really don't feel like this is worth taking. Tier 7 playing 14 kilometers away just doesn't sound right to me as a destroyer player. So that's why I lean more towards the Main Battery and AA Specialist. So this would be the build I would recommend taking here on the Huron. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, what you intend on taking. And we can actually, right now, because this is very temporary, you can test some different things out. So for 2 weeks since the new drop of the new update, I can experiment with things here, but with being a 10-point commander, there's not so much that we get to experiment with here with. So I'll make sure to take advantage of this while it's still active, because it's only from tomorrow when you're watching this video. The special is going to end in 11 days. It's 12 days because I'm recording it on Friday. So I think that's going to wrap us up here on the Tier 7 Huron. One thing I should probably make mention is you also can switch out for a maybe more fun, quote-unquote, camouflage to bring a little more attention to yourself, be a little more flashy in battle. But I prefer the other one just because it blends in with my surroundings a bit more, per se. So if you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And thanks for those of you who voted in the poll that this ship would be featured today. The Prinz Ruprecht, the Tier 9 German battleship, battlecruiser, came in second. And I'm going to feature that next weekend. So make sure to hit the bell to be notified when these videos go up, because I try to do 6 videos a week. Sometimes it's 5. So until next time, take care.